The sleek silver ship of the Galactic Council cut through Earth's clouds like a knife through butter, its hull gleaming in the afternoon sun. Inside the ship, Ambassador Tahoe Parks stood at the observation window, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the blue planet grow larger. His delegation of 10 experts, each chosen for their knowledge of emerging civilizations, waited quietly behind him. "Quite beautiful," he said softly, though his calm voice carried an edge of dismissal. Another primitive world taking its first steps into space. The ship's pilot, a young officer named Dae-sung, guided them through the upper atmosphere with practiced ease. According to their records, humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. The Galactic Council had given them the customary observation period before making first contact. Now, it was time to welcome Earth into the galactic community, or so they thought. Their first surprise came as they approached the designated landing zone. Instead of the expected basic spaceport, they found themselves descending toward a massive complex of gleaming buildings and advanced landing pads. Streams of vehicles moved through the air in perfect formation, their anti-gravity systems far more refined than the Council's own technology. "This can't be right," muttered Tahoe, leaning forward to get a better look. "Check our coordinates again." "Coordinates confirmed, Ambassador," replied Dae-sung. "This is the Singapore spaceport." As their ship touched down, Tahoe noticed something else that made his breath catch. The landing pad was surrounded by a shimming field he recognized as a quantum stabilization matrix, technology that the Council had only theorized about but never successfully created. The ship's external sensors began picking up readings that made no sense. Dark matter manipulation signatures, zero-point energy fields, and quantum computing networks that surpassed anything in the Council's database. Tahoe's delegation members exchanged worried glances as they reviewed the data on their tablets. "Ambassador," called out their science officer, Minji, her voice tight with concern. "These readings suggest technology levels far beyond what a young civilization should possess. Their energy signature alone indicates." She was interrupted by a soft chime announcing the arrival of their welcoming committee. The ship's main door opened with a gentle hiss, revealing a group of humans waiting on the landing pad. At their head stood a woman in a crisp white uniform, her posture perfectly straight and her expression pleasantly neutral. "Welcome to Earth," she said, bowing slightly. "I am Dr. Hae-Nyul Kim, Chief Scientific Officer of the United Earth Government. We've been expecting you." Tahoe stepped forward, forcing himself to maintain his diplomatic composure despite his growing unease. The humans showed none of the wide-eyed wonder or nervousness typical of first-contact situations. Instead, they carried themselves with the quiet confidence of equals, or perhaps something more. Following standard protocol, the human delegation was scanned for weapons and diseases. It was during this routine procedure that Medical Officer Jin-Woo Lee made the discovery that would shake the foundations of galactic society. "Ambassador," Jin-Woo called out, his voice trembling slightly. "You need to see this immediately." Tahoe walked over to the medical scanner's display. The screen showed a complex arrangement of genetic markers, ones that were impossibly advanced and bore signs of deliberate engineering. But it wasn't just the complexity that caused Jin-Woo's hands to shake as he pointed to specific sequences. "These markers," Jin-Woo explained, "they show signs of age. Not just hundreds or thousands of years, but hundreds of thousands. The degradation patterns are unlike anything we've ever seen." Tahoe stared at the results, his mind refusing to accept what he was seeing. According to their historical records, humans had evolved from primitive ancestors roughly 300,000 years ago. But the genetic markers in their DNA told a different story, one of ancient sophistication and deliberate design. "This is impossible," Tahoe muttered, staring at the results. "These genetic sequences, they're ancient." Dr. Hae-Nyul Kim stepped forward, a knowing smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "it's time we had a discussion about human history. The real history." The delegation members gathered around the display, their faces showing varying degrees of shock and disbelief. The quantum computing signatures, the dark matter manipulation, the advanced genetic markers, none of it fit with what they knew about human civilization. As they followed Dr. Kim into the spaceport's main building, Tahoe couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't here to welcome Earth into the galactic community at all. Instead, it felt increasingly like they were the ones being welcomed by a civilization far older and more advanced than anyone had imagined. The spaceport's interior revealed even more impossible technology. Holographic displays showed ships moving through fold space with impossible precision. Workers manipulated gravity fields as casually as council citizens might use a computer. Everything they had assumed about human technological development was being proven wrong with each passing moment. "We have much to discuss," Dr. Kim said as she led them toward a conference room. "And I suspect you have many questions. But first, there's something you should know about the age of our species." Tahoe glanced at his delegation members, noting their tense expressions. Whatever they had expected to find on Earth, this wasn't it. They had come to guide what they thought was a young civilization, but now found themselves facing what appeared to be something much older and much more advanced than anything they had encountered before. The African sun beat down mercilessly on the excavation site in Tanzania's Olduvai Gorge. Professor Myra Song wiped sweat from her brow as she carefully brushed away centuries of packed dirt from what had first appeared to be just another stone formation. But as more dirt fell away, a metallic gleam caught her eye. "Everyone over here," she called out, her voice carrying across the dig site. Her team of archaeologists, both human and alien, quickly gathered around her position. Among them was Do-Hyun Choi, her longtime research partner, and two of Tahoe's archaeological experts. The dig site had been active for months, ever since initial scans had detected unusual energy signatures deep beneath the ancient gorge. What had started as a joint human-alien research project had slowly transformed into something far more significant. Mayray worked with painstaking care, using small brushes and precision tools to reveal more of the metallic surface. The panel was roughly 2 meters wide, its surface covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as the sunlight played across them. One of Tahoe's experts, an archaeologist named Unji, pulled out a scanner and began taking readings. Her eyes widened as she studied the results. "These patterns," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "They match the markings we found in the Centauri ruins, and the ones on Mars, and the ones on every ancient world we've ever discovered," finished Do-Hyun, kneeling down to get a closer look. He reached out to touch the surface but stopped short, remembering protocol. Mayray nodded to her colleague and pulled out a specialized sampling tool. With precise movements, she extracted a tiny portion of the metal for analysis. The sample floated in a containment field as their equipment began its work. "Look at this," Mayray called to Do-Hyun, pointing to the readout. "The metal, it's a nanotech composite. Our dating puts it at roughly 800,000 years old." Her voice carried a mix of awe and disbelief. The assembled team fell silent. According to accepted history, humans at that time were still using stone tools. The idea of nanotechnology existing hundreds of thousands of years ago seemed impossible. Over the next few hours, more of the panel was revealed. It wasn't just a simple metal sheet. It was part of something larger, something that extended deep into the Earth. Ground-penetrating radar revealed a vast complex buried beneath the ancient soil. News of the discovery spread quickly. Within days, the site was swarming with researchers from every major scientific institution on Earth. The Galactic Council sent their top archaeologists and historians, all eager to understand how this discovery would reshape their understanding of human history. As they dug deeper, they found more evidence that defied explanation. Rooms filled with dormant but intact technology, data storage systems that still held fragments of information, power systems that hummed to life at the slightest touch, despite being buried for hundreds of thousands of years. "This changes everything," Mayray said one evening, As she and Do-hyun reviewed the day's findings, our entire understanding of human evolution, of Earth's history, of galactic history, added Do-hyun. He pointed to a holographic display showing the analysis of the site's layout. Look at the architectural style. It's not just similar to other ancient ruins across the galaxy. It's identical, down to the smallest detail. The implications were staggering. Either every advanced civilization in the galaxy had somehow developed the exact same architectural and technological style independently, or they all came from the same source. As more artifacts were uncovered, a pattern began to emerge. The technology wasn't just advanced, it was beyond anything currently known to either humans or the Galactic Council. The nanotech composites used in construction were self-repairing, explaining their incredible preservation. The power systems operated on principles that modern science was only beginning to understand. May spent long hours in the makeshift lab, analyzing every new finding with meticulous care. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something obvious, something important. The artifacts weren't just preserved, they seemed to be waiting. 1 month into the excavation, they'd made another breakthrough. Deep within the complex, they found a room that was different from the others. Its walls were covered in displays that activated as soon as they entered, showing star maps and technical diagrams that made even the most advanced council scientists pause in wonder. It's not just a building, Myray realized, studying the displays. It's a library, a record of who we were. The discovery sent shockwaves through both human and alien scientific communities. Humanity's accepted timeline wasn't just being questioned, it was crumbling completely. The evidence suggested that humans hadn't evolved from primitive ancestors at all. They had been an advanced civilization long before the accepted dawn of human history. As Myray stood in that ancient room, surrounded by the legacy of her impossibly ancient ancestors, she couldn't help but wonder what had happened to make humanity forget. And more importantly, why had they chosen to forget? The answers, she suspected, lay somewhere in this buried complex. In the meantime, every new discovery raised more questions than it answered, and the world watched in amazement as humanity's true history slowly emerged from the African soil. The underground laboratory beneath Seoul hummed with activity as banks of quantum computers processed vast amounts of genetic data. Dr. Yoon-jae Kang sat at his workstation, his tired eyes fixed on streams of information flowing across multiple holographic displays. For 3 days straight, he had been analyzing the largest collection of human DNA sequences ever assembled. "This can't be coincidental," he muttered, rubbing his eyes as another pattern emerged from the data. Around him, the secure facility's white walls seemed to pulse with the soft blue light from dozens of similar workstations. His research partner, Jae-yeon Ryu, walked over with 2 cups of coffee. She set one down beside him and peered at his screens. "Found something." Yoon-gi took a sip of coffee and pointed to a particular sequence that kept repeating across different populations. "Look at this. It's in everyone's DNA, but it's not just random genetic code. These sequences, they're structured, organized." Jae-yeon leaned closer, her eyes widening as she recognized the implications. The genetic patterns they were seeing weren't natural variations. They were more like computer code written into human DNA itself. "Run it through the new decoder," she suggested, referring to a program they had developed based on the ancient technology found in Tanzania. Yoon-gi nodded and input the commands. The results made both scientists step back in shock. The seemingly random genetic sequences began arranging themselves into clear patterns, mathematical formulas, scientific principles, and what appeared to be star maps, all encoded within the human genome. It wasn't random evolution, Yoon-gi explained, his voice filled with wonder. "We were engineered to forget, but also to remember when the time was right. Every human being on Earth carries this information in their cells." As if responding to their discovery, alerts began popping up on screens throughout the facility. Similar patterns were being identified in laboratories worldwide. The dormant genetic code was becoming active, responding to some unseen signal. Reports started flooding in from around the globe. In the Amazon rainforest, a structure that had been dismissed as a natural formation suddenly came alive with light. Deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, long dormant power signatures began to pulse. Outside Beijing, farmers reported strange lights coming from what they had always thought was an ordinary hill. Their defense installations, Jai Yun realized, scanning the incoming reports. Our ancestors left them here, waiting for us to remember. The facility's main screen lit up with a priority message from the United Earth government. Similar installations were activating worldwide, responding to protocols that had lain dormant for hundreds of thousands of years. Yoon-Gai pulled up more genetic data, focusing on the newly active sequences. Look at how the code is structured. It's not just information storage, it's a trigger mechanism. As these sequences activate, they're causing changes in human brain chemistry. We're not just remembering information, we're remembering how to understand it. In the days that followed, more discoveries emerged. The genetic modifications weren't limited to information storage. They included enhanced cognitive abilities, improved physical capabilities, and even the ability to interface directly with the ancient technology that was awakening around the world. People began reporting strange dreams filled with complex equations and forgotten languages. Children started solving advanced mathematical problems without training. Elderly individuals suddenly recalled memories that couldn't possibly be their own. Our ancestors knew this would happen, Jai Yun said one evening as they reviewed the latest data. They built all of this into our DNA, knowing that someday we would need to remember who we really are. The Galactic Council observers watched these developments with growing concern. The humans they had thought to be a young species were revealing themselves to be something far more complex and far more advanced. In their secure facility, Yoon-Gai and Jai Yun continued their work, trying to understand the full scope of what was happening. The genetic sequences weren't just awakening randomly. They were activating in a specific order, like a carefully programmed sequence. There's more coming, Yoon-Gai noted, studying the patterns. This is just the beginning of the awakening. Whatever our ancestors were preparing us for, it's bigger than anything we've imagined. Outside their facility, the night sky over Seoul was filled with strange lights as another ancient installation revealed itself. The world was changing, humanity was remembering, and the true legacy of their species was finally beginning to emerge from its long slumber. As Yoon-Gai and Jai Yun watched their screens, more genetic sequences began to activate. Their ancestors had left them more than just information. They had left them the tools to reclaim their forgotten legacy. The question that haunted them now was not how this was possible, but why it had been necessary in the first place. The genetic code that had slept in human DNA for countless generations was finally awakening, and with it, the true nature of humanity was about to be revealed. The world would never be the same, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, something was stirring in response to humanity's awakening. The ancient monastery clung to the mountainside of Bhutan like a sleeping dragon. Snow fell softly around the centuries-old stone buildings as HFY Park led the delegation through wooden gates that hadn't opened to outsiders in over 1,000 years. The group following her included Earth's top scientists, Galactic Council representatives, and government officials from every major nation. Their footsteps echoed on worn stone steps as HFY, dressed in simple red robes, guided them deeper into the monastery. For 10,000 generations, she said, her voice carrying clearly in the thin mountain air, my order has waited for this moment. She stopped before a seemingly ordinary wall covered in traditional Buddhist artwork. HFY placed her palm against the center of a mandala painting. The wall shimmered and disappeared, revealing a vast chamber filled with technology that made even the Galactic Council members gasp. Holographic displays lined the walls, showing star maps and technical diagrams that shouldn't have existed in a 1,000-year-old monastery. We were never primitive, she told the assembled scientists and diplomats, her voice firm and clear. We chose to forget, to hide, to survive. The chamber hummed with power that had been running continuously for hundreds of thousands of years. Ancient computers displayed information in languages that were only now being rediscovered. In the center of the room stood a device that looked like a meditation circle, but was actually an advanced quantum interface. Every monastery like ours, Heat One continued, every temple, every sacred site on Earth. They're all part of the same network. We were the guardians, keeping watch over humanity's sleeping knowledge. Ambassador Tejo stepped forward, his face pale. How many of these sites exist? Thousands, Heat One replied. Hidden in plain sight, protected by those who took vows to remember while the rest of humanity forgot. She walked to one of the holographic displays and activated it with a gesture. Images appeared showing Earth as it had been 800,000 years ago. A world of impossible cities, ships that sailed between stars, and technology that surpassed anything currently known. We were not primitive hunters who slowly learned to use tools, she explained. We were a civilization that chose to step backward, to hide ourselves in plain sight. The evidence was displayed all around them. Records showed how humanity had deliberately altered their own genetics, carefully preserving their advanced knowledge in dormant DNA sequences while suppressing their technological capabilities. But why? Asked Dr. Hae-Nul Kim, who had been studying the displays with growing amazement. Why would an advanced civilization choose to devolve? He-One's expression grew grave. Because something was hunting us. Something that could detect advanced civilizations, but would ignore primitive ones. We hid ourselves in the only way we could, by becoming something that wouldn't attract attention. The chamber filled with murmurs as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't evolved from primitive ancestors. They had deliberately devolved themselves. The story of human evolution was actually a story of planned regression. My order, He-One continued, along with others like it across the world, maintained the knowledge in secret. We watched. We waited. We preserved the truth through myths, legends, and sacred texts that seemed like simple stories but contained encoded information. She led them deeper into the chamber where ancient machinery hummed to life at their approach. Every religion, every mythology, every ancient tradition, they all contained pieces of our true history. The gods were our ancestors. The magical powers were our technology. The great floods and catastrophes were real events. The diplomats and scientists moved through the chamber in stunned silence, looking at evidence that rewrote everything they thought they knew about human history. Ancient starship designs, weapon systems, medical technology far beyond current understanding. All of it had been preserved here. And now, He-One said, her voice carrying a note of urgency, we are awakening because we must. The threat our ancestors hid from is returning. The genetic triggers activating worldwide. The ancient installations coming online. It's all part of the plan they left for us. She touched another control, and the chamber filled with a holographic image of the galaxy. Red markers appeared, showing something moving toward Earth from the outer edges of space. For countless generations, my family and others like us have carried this knowledge. We walked among you, looking like simple monks and priests, but we were guardians of humanity's greatest secret. Now, it's time for everyone to remember. The assembled group stood in silence, trying to process the magnitude of what they were learning. Everything they thought they knew about human history, about evolution, about civilization itself, had been carefully constructed fiction. The deception wasn't just to fool our enemies, He-One explained. It was to fool ourselves, because the only way to hide completely was to truly forget. But our ancestors made sure we could remember when we needed to. As if to emphasize her words, another ancient system somewhere in the monastery activated, sending vibrations through the stone floors. Outside, the snow had stopped falling, and the clouds parted to reveal a sky filled with strange lights as more of Earth's hidden legacy awakened. The great deception was ending. Humanity was remembering what they had chosen to forget. And somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, something ancient and terrible had begun to take notice. The dreams began on a Tuesday. Across the globe, billions of people woke up with knowledge they couldn't explain. In Busan, South Korea, 17-year-old Sun Woo-ba opened his eyes and found he could no longer remember how to speak Korean. Instead, words in an unknown language flowed from his lips, words that perfectly matched the mysterious inscriptions recently discovered on Mars. His parents rushed him to the hospital, where doctors found themselves facing similar cases. In the same ward, a retired accountant was solving complex quantum equations on his breakfast tray. A young girl was drawing detailed starship schematics in her coloring book. An elderly man was explaining theoretical physics to his nurses in a language that hadn't been spoken on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years. Dr. Min-ho Kwon worked tirelessly in his Seoul laboratory, documenting each new case as reports flooded in from around the world. His monitors showed a steady increase in unusual brain activity across the global population. The genetic modifications hidden in human DNA were activating, unlocking abilities and knowledge that had lain dormant for millennia. The genetic locks are opening, he explained to his team as they reviewed the latest data. We're remembering who we were. He pointed to a graph showing exponential growth in cognitive activity worldwide. It's not just random information. It's structured, organized, like a carefully planned sequence of awakening. In classrooms across the planet, teachers watched in amazement as students began solving complex mathematical problems without training. University professors found themselves learning from their students as ancient scientific knowledge surfaced in young minds. Sun Woo-ba became the first documented case of complete language recovery. Within days of his initial transformation, he could read and translate the ancient texts that had puzzled archaeologists for decades. It's like remembering something I never forgot, he tried to explain to Dr. Kwon. The knowledge was always there, just sleeping. The Galactic Council's observation posts recorded everything with growing concern. Their sensors detected massive energy signatures as more ancient installations activated around the planet. The humans they had considered primitive were transforming before their eyes, revealing capabilities that surpassed anything known to galactic science. In India, a young farmer suddenly understood how to operate quantum field generators. In Brazil, a street vendor began explaining the principles of dark matter manipulation to passersby. In Egypt, a tour guide started describing the true purpose of the pyramids, not tombs, but components of a vast planetary defense network. Dr. Kwon's team worked around the clock, documenting each new development. The pattern was clear. The awakening wasn't random. It followed the same sequence worldwide, unlocking different types of knowledge in a carefully orchestrated progression. Look at this, he told his colleagues, displaying a global map of brain activity. The awakening is following the same pattern as the ancient installations. It's all connected, all part of the same system. The Galactic Council called an emergency session as more reports came in. Humanity wasn't just remembering. They were surpassing current galactic technology levels at an alarming rate. Children played with gravity as if it were a toy. Teenagers designed faster-than-light drives as school projects. Sun Woo-ba, now working with Dr. Kwon's team, made another breakthrough. The language he spoke wasn't just for communication. It was a command language for the ancient technology. When he spoke certain phrases, dormant machines hummed to life. When he sang certain songs, hidden doorways opened in seemingly solid rock. We didn't just hide our technology, he explained, his words automatically translating for those who hadn't yet awakened to the ancient language. We hid our entire civilization inside ourselves, waiting for the right moment to remember. The awakening continued to spread. Dreams became more vivid, filled with technical knowledge and historical memories. People began remembering lives they hadn't lived, skills they hadn't learned. The collective knowledge of an ancient civilization was emerging from its long slumber. Dr. Kwon's latest readings showed that the process was accelerating. Each new awakening triggered others, creating a cascade effect that spread across the global population. The genetic locks were opening faster now, releasing thousands of years of compressed knowledge and experience. In his laboratory, Surrounded by screens showing the transformation of humanity, Dr. Kwan watched as another wave of awakening swept across the planet. The human race was remembering its true nature, and with that remembrance came power that made the Galactic Council tremble. "We're not just remembering what we were," Dr. Kwan noted in his final report of the day. "We're becoming what we were always meant to be." As night fell over Earth, millions more dreams bloomed in sleeping minds. Ancient knowledge continued to surface, and humanity's true potential continued to unleash itself. The Great Awakening had begun, and there would be no going back to sleep. The stars seemed to shine brighter that night, as if responding to humanity's remembrance. And somewhere in the darkness between them, something ancient and terrible took notice of the awakening race it had hunted so long ago. The deep-sea vessel descended through layers of dark water, its lights illuminating strange structures that shouldn't exist at these depths. Ambassador Tahoe and Dr. Hainul watched through the reinforced viewport as ancient buildings emerged from the gloom, their surfaces untouched by millennia under the Pacific Ocean. The coordinates were exact, Hainul said, checking the data they had extracted from the newly awakened installations worldwide. The vessel's crew, a mix of human and Galactic Council members, guided them toward what appeared to be a massive doorway set into the ocean floor. As they approached, lines of light flickered to life along the structure's surface. The door recognized their presence, responding to genetic signatures it had waited eons to detect. With a sound that carried clearly through the ocean depths, it began to open. "Impossible," one of the council scientists muttered. "No material should function after so long underwater." The vessel slipped through the doorway into a massive air-filled chamber. As they docked at an ancient but perfectly preserved landing pad, their instruments detected breathable atmosphere and normal gravity, systems that had run continuously for hundreds of thousands of years. Hanul led the way into the facility, following directions that seemed to appear in her mind as the genetic memories continued to surface. The chamber they entered was vast, its ceiling lost in darkness above them. Along its walls, frozen in perfect preservation, stood rows of massive ships unlike anything known to current science. "These were the Cedars," Hainul explained, memories flooding back as she walked among them. "The ships our ancestors used to spread life across the galaxy." Tahoe touched one of the ship's hulls with trembling fingers. "You mean?" "Yes," Hainul said, approaching a central console that hummed to life at her presence. "We were the precursors, the ones your legends speak of, the ones who came before." The console projected a massive hologram showing the galaxy as it had been 800,000 years ago. They watched in awe as human ships moved between the stars, carefully seeding worlds with engineered life forms designed to evolve into intelligent species. "We created you all," Hainul whispered, watching the records of humanity's ancient work. "Every species in the Galactic Council, every civilization you've ever encountered. They were all our children." The council members in their group stood in shocked silence as they watched their own worlds in the ancient recordings, saw their species being carefully crafted and placed on suitable planets. Everything they had believed about their origins was being rewritten before their eyes. But then the recordings showed something else. At the edges of the galaxy, something massive and dark began to appear. The ancient humans detected it too late. An entity or force that consumed advanced civilizations, drawn to them like a predator to prey. "This is why we hid," Hainul said, her voice heavy with the weight of remembered tragedy. "Why we had to make ourselves forget. This thing, this hunter, it could detect any civilization above a certain technological level. But it ignored primitive ones. They watched as humanity made its desperate choice. Rather than flee to another galaxy and abandon their created children, they chose to hide in plain sight, to devolve themselves while leaving behind the means to reawaken when needed." The recording showed the massive undertaking, the careful genetic modifications, the hidden installations, the preserved knowledge. Humanity hadn't just hidden themselves, they had hidden their true nature from themselves. "But why are we awakening now?" Tahoe asked, though part of him already knew the answer. Newell activated another sequence of recordings. They showed long-range sensor data, recordings from automated outposts at the galaxy's edge. The hunter was returning. Our ancestors knew it would come back, she explained. They left us everything we would need, hidden in our genes, in our myths, in installations like this one. They knew we would need to remember, to reclaim our true nature, to face this threat. The final recordings revealed the full scope of humanity's ancient plan. The awakening wasn't just about remembering. It was about preparing for a war that had been postponed for 800,000 years. The ancient ships around them weren't just preserved. They were waiting. "Look at this," Newell said, bringing up technical specifications for the vessels. "They're not just cedars. They're weapons. Our ancestors left us an army." Tahoe looked at the ships with new understanding. "You're not just remembering who you were," he said slowly. "You're preparing for battle." Newell nodded, her face grave. "We created all the species in this galaxy. We shaped them, guided them, protected them. And now we must remember who we are to protect them again." Above them, through miles of ocean water, the stars continued their slow dance across the sky. Somewhere out there, the ancient enemy approached, unaware that its long-forgotten prey had prepared for this moment for 800 millennia. In the ancient chamber beneath the Pacific, humanity's true purpose was finally revealed. They were not just another species discovering its past. They were the guardians of the galaxy awakening to face a threat only they had survived to remember. The time for hiding was over. The time for remembering had begun. And soon, very soon, would come the time for battle. Jin Yun stood at the window of humanity's new command center, watching as another ancient defense platform rose from beneath the Atlantic Ocean. The massive structure breached the surface like a mechanical leviathan, water cascading from its gleaming surfaces as it took its place in Earth's rapidly expanding defense network. Behind her, the combined forces of humanity and a galactic council worked in perfect harmony. The genetic awakening had reached its final stages, and humans now operated complex ancient systems with the casual ease of long practice. "Defense grid at 70% capacity," reported her aide, checking holographic displays that floated in the air. "The Mars installations are online, and the lunar bases are almost fully activated." Jin nodded, remembering how just months ago she had been a quantum physics professor. Now, like everyone else, she carried the memories and knowledge of humanity's true heritage. The awakening had transformed her, as it had transformed all of humanity. Ambassador Teo entered the command center, followed by representatives from every council species. They no longer showed the uncertainty of earlier days. Instead, they watched their newfound ancestors with pride and determination. "The council fleets are in position," Tahoe announced. "Every civilization we created has answered the call. They stand ready to fight alongside their makers." The ancient defense systems continued to activate worldwide. Pyramids revealed themselves as power nodes, mountain ranges split open to reveal hidden hangars, and the ocean floors yielded more secrets with each passing day. "We slept to survive." Jin addressed the united forces gathered in the command center. "Now we wait to fight." Her words echoed through communication channels across Earth and to every council world. The transformation of human civilization had been staggering in its speed and scope. Cities had rebuilt themselves overnight as ancient technology reactivated. The primitive tools of modern humanity had been replaced by devices that operated on principles current science had barely imagined. Children played in gravity-free zones while their parents piloted ships that could cross galaxies. The distinction between human and machine blurred as people accessed the vast network of ancient knowledge directly through their awakened genetic interfaces. "Long-range sensors detect the enemy approaching the outer rim," a technician announced. "Estimated arrival time: 6 months." Jin studied the tactical displays. The hunter that had forced humanity into hiding was massive, a swarm-like entity that devoured advanced civilizations. But this time, Humanity wasn't facing it alone. Ships from every council world moved into formation around Earth. Species that had once thought themselves unrelated now recognized their common ancestry in their shared genetic patterns and technological foundations. Our ancestors left us more than weapons, Se-Jin reminded the assembled forces. They left us wisdom, unity, the understanding that all intelligent life in this galaxy shares a common source. We are one family, and we will fight as one. The ancient defense platforms, now fully activated, created a shield around Earth that bent both space and time. Similar installations on Mars, Venus, and across the solar system formed an interlocking network of defenses that would have been impossible with modern technology. In orbit, the Cedar ships that had once carried life across the galaxy were being recommissioned as warships. Their crews, both human and council, worked together with the efficiency of those who shared a common purpose and heritage. "Look at what we've achieved in mere months," Tahoe said, standing beside Se-Jin. "When the genetic locks first began opening, we thought human civilization was barely beginning. Now we know it was just remembering." Se-Jin smiled. The awakening had brought more than just knowledge and technology. It had brought understanding. The countless religions and myths of human history had been revealed as encoded messages from their ancestors. The wars and divisions of the past seemed trivial now, faced with the truth of their common heritage and the threat to all life in the galaxy. "Final defense grid activated," announced the technical team. Around the planet, ancient weapons platforms hummed with power that had slept for 800 millennia. The installations hidden beneath the oceans, in mountain ranges, and beneath the polar ice caps were ready. "We are no longer the children you created," Tahoe said to Se-Jin, speaking for all council species. "But we are proud to stand with our makers." As the sun set on this new era of human civilization, Se-Jin looked at the assembled forces, human and alien, creator and created, all united in purpose. The great sleep was over. The time of remembering had passed. Now came the time of renewal, of reclaiming their role as guardians of all life in the galaxy. The hunter that had forced them into hiding would find not a scattered primitive species, but a unified force of all galactic civilization, led by the very prey it had thought long forgotten. Humanity had hidden once to survive. Now they were awake, remembered, and ready to fight for the future of all their children among the stars.